He conquered England with fire and sword, but died bloated, alone, and unloved. His body was so swollen from gluttony and infection that when priests tried to force it into a stone tomb, it burst. This is the horrific, true story of William, the Conqueror, the king who ate himself to death and exploded at his own funeral. And if you're drawn to royal histories that reveal what really happened behind the throne, don't forget to hit subscribe. William wasn't born to rule England, he stole it. As Duke of Normandy, he crossed the sea in 1066 and defeated King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. He became William I of England, a brutal, brilliant warrior who ruled with an iron fist. He crushed rebellions, built castles, and rewrote England's laws. But as the years passed, the sword grew heavy. The battlefield grew distant. And William, the once lean, ferocious knight, began to change. His body expanded, his temper worsened, and his appetite became legendary. By his later years, William was no longer the muscular conqueror of Hastings. He had become massively obese. His love for food became a spectacle. Feasts were lavish, frequent, and excessive. Chroniclers wrote that he ate with desperation, as if trying to fill something deeper than hunger. His stomach bulged, his legs weakened, his armor had to be specially widened. And yet, he continued. Roasted meats, sweetened wines, heavy breads. The very body that had once stormed castles was now being broken by indulgence. His enemies couldn't defeat him, but his own habits were beginning to. In 1087, at the age of 59, William led a brutal campaign into France, his final attempt to assert dominance. But during a raid on the town of Mantes, his horse stumbled. As it stepped over burning rubble, the king was thrown forward, his massive weight crashing onto the saddle pommel. The impact tore open his internal organs. At first, he tried to ignore it, but soon, the pain became unbearable. He was rushed to Rouen, placed in a monastery bed, and began to rot from the inside out. The conqueror was dying, not in battle, but in slow, putrid agony as William lay dying. The smell of decay filled the monastery halls. His abdomen had ruptured internally. Infection spread rapidly. The monks burned incense to mask the odor, but nothing helped. His once loyal nobles began slipping away. Some fled with valuables, others simply vanished. Even his sons began arguing over succession before he had taken his last breath. William, the man who once terrified kingdoms, now lay alone, bloated, abandoned, and rotting before he was even dead. The empire he built by blood was unraveling as his body did the same. As death approached, William's tone shifted. The ruthless conqueror turned reflective, even fearful. He confessed to the violence he had unleashed across England and France. He wept, asked for forgiveness, and tried to make peace with his sons, splitting his lands between them. Normandy went to Robert, England to William Rufus. But even in these final moments, there was no warmth, no comfort. His attendants feared touching him. His doctors refused to cut away the rot. The king who once held the fate of two nations now held nothing but regret and pain. On September 9, 1087, William the Conqueror took his final breath. But his death did not bring honor, it brought chaos. The room was looted. Servants stripped the bed, stole silverware, and even left his corpse alone. No one stayed to guard the king's body. The man who had shaped England's destiny was now just a bloated corpse in an empty room. His sons were already scheming. His court had scattered, and the monks, overwhelmed by the stench and size of his decaying body, delayed the funeral. No king had ever fallen so far, so fast. When they finally arranged his burial in Caen, Normandy, William's corpse had already begun to decompose badly. Monks struggled to dress and transport the body. It was swollen, leaking, and stiff. At the church, a fire had damaged the tomb space, so the opening was smaller than planned. Still, the priests pressed forward, eager to bury the king before the decay worsened. But when they tried to lower him into the stone sarcophagus, his bloated abdomen wouldn't fit. They pushed harder. And then, the unthinkable happened. As the monks forced William's body into the too small tomb, the pressure became too much. With a sickening burst, his abdomen split open, releasing a wave of putrid gas, blood, and decaying organs into the chapel. The stench was immediate, overwhelming. Mourners fled. Priests gagged. Some fainted. The ceremony halted in chaos. What was meant to be a solemn royal burial became a horror show of death and decay. The conqueror, who had terrified nations, ended, not in glory, but in a room filled with fleeing nobles and the sound of flies. After the explosion, the priests rushed to clean what they could. They stuffed the torn body into the sarcophagus, covered it quickly, and sealed the tomb with stone and silence. There was no royal procession, no banners waving in triumph, no final tribute fit for a king. Just a hurried prayer, a scorched church, and the lingering stench of failure. The Conqueror of England was buried not as a legend, but as a cautionary tale. Even in death, his body refused to fit the image history had built around him. William left behind a divided empire. His eldest son, Robert, resented being passed over for England. His younger son, William Rufus, ruled with arrogance and cruelty. The lands William had conquered with fire and fear soon turned on themselves. Civil war brewed. Trust evaporated. And across England and Normandy, the peasants whispered not about his victories, but about his bloated corpse, the explosion, the humiliation. His name had once commanded fear. Now, it was tangled with rot. A king who ruled two nations had become a story parents whispered to frighten their children. Decades later, William's tomb didn't stay untouched. War, neglect, and religious upheaval saw it disturbed multiple times. During the French Wars of Religion, his bones were scattered, his original grave marker destroyed. Only a single thigh bone was recovered and reburied. The rest of him? Lost. The king who once shaped history now rests in fragments. His legacy? Quite literally broken. No crown, no body, no peace. The man who conquered with steel was conquered by time, decay, and the very earth meant to honor him. That William's explosion wasn't just a grotesque accident. It became a symbol of unchecked power and indulgence. Chroniclers used it as moral warning that even kings must answer to time, to decay, to the very laws of nature they believed themselves above. His swollen corpse became a reflection of his swollen rule, bloated with conquest, pride, and appetite. In life, he had reshaped kingdoms. In death, he reminded the world that no throne is immune to rot. Not even the greatest warrior could outrun the consequences of his own body. Today, history remembers William the Conqueror as the man who won the Battle of Hastings, who changed the face of England forever. But the darker side of his legacy is often hidden beneath banners and battle maps. Few schoolbooks mention the burst tomb, the abandoned body, or the shameful funeral. Yet those final days tell us just as much about him as the victories. He ruled with fear, expanded with force, but died bloated, alone, and feared even in death. Not all legacies are made in war. Some are carved in silence and sealed in stone. That William's story is not just about conquest. It's about what power does to the body and soul. He rose from illegitimacy to become king, but the hunger that made him great never left him. Hunger for land, for fear, for control, and finally for food. His appetite became a curse, his body a battlefield. In the end, the same man who bent empires to his will couldn't even fit inside his own tomb. His death wasn't heroic. It was human, tragic, crude, inevitable. And for a man who ruled through intimidation, that may be the greatest irony of all. William the Conqueror changed history, but he couldn't change his fate. In life, he crushed armies. In death, he couldn't even fit his own coffin. The man who commanded thrones, redrew borders, and ruled with brutal strength was finally brought down by his own flesh. His story didn't end with glory. It ended with a pop, a stench, and a scrambled burial. And maybe that's the lesson. Power can conquer nations, but it can't conquer the body or the cost of unchecked hunger. That in the end, the king didn't die in battle, that he died in pieces.